All right, hey, what up, guys? I told you guys I'd do another video. Um, I was down to either Donnell Hunter or Preston Smith, and I decided to do Preston Smith because a lot of Donnell Hunter's tape is projection, whereas Preston Smith's you really see it on film, and that's what's here to do. So I cut three of DB's videos, just clips of the videos. Um, I only put about a minute and a half's worth in this, so this might be a little bit of shorter video. But I watched him against Auburn. I watched him against who else was it? I watched him against Texas A&M for sure. And then the other one I forgot. I guess we'll get to it when we get to it. But you see him right here. He's playing right end, going up against the left tackle against Auburn here. He has what I would say that is his best. I guess his best attributes would be in what you would consider the long game. You know, the small game is kind of just being able to outrun guys and bend around the corner and all stuff like that. Um, Really, what he's able to do is he just has that strength from just the bulk that he has. I mean, he's a pretty big dude as far as college pass rushers go, and he also has very, very good length, and he knows how to use it. So you see him going up against this left tackle, and he just kind of just beats him early on. Like he drops his head, and Preston's just heavy hands is just able to clean him up. He just kind of tosses a dude to the ground, even though he was trying to cut him. He was able to stay clean, and that sends Marshall out. All right, so here he is at the bottom of the screen again. First and goal. And this is him. I've said this in a couple videos. I mean, this is basic outside containment defense for an even front. Is if you're an end, you keep that outside shoulder clean. If you're a free guy, don't be over aggressive and just get that depth. What you want to do is shuffle down that line of scrimmage so you make sure that you're able to close in and have that outside shoulder at the same time. So that's what he does. Just assignment football, gets the running back for like a 2-yard gain. Top of the screen this time. Let's see on here. Oh, just so here, kind of takes care of this guard, and he's able to shed toward the running back. Like I said, he knows how to use his length very, very well. And even though he was going after the tackle and the guard got back on him, he wasn't really destroyed. I mean, he had the ability to recover right there. Like I said before, his ability, like his body type, and just his stout run defense overall is very good. The player that I'd probably compare him to the most, if it's not like a Justin Tuck or as Josh Norris from NBC and Roto World has said, Malik Jackson. The other guy that I'd say is a guy who was drafted last year in the 3rd round, but I was a huge fan of. I believe he was in my top 15. Was Scott Crichton. And you'll see more of this as we go on, but he got a lot of interior defensive line reps, and that's another thing Scott Crichton did very well. On top of being able to play very good run defense and scoring well at the combine, he played very well when he kicked in as an interior defensive lineman, and I think that's really where he's gonna make his money. We're only so far removed from Parnell McAfee signing with the Chicago Bears on what I believe is a 5-year deal. And he's not really an edge rusher as much as he's just a guy who, as an interior defensive lineman, can get pressure. So to say that Preston Smith can only rush from the inside, one, I don't think that's true because I think he uses length and strength well on the outside. But even if he were only an interior defensive pressure guy, that still has tremendous value in the NFL. It doesn't matter where you can get pressure as long as you can get pressure. It is still a quarterback's game. So the top of the screen here going up against that left tackle. And right there you see him move. He has very good technique. Like I said, he knows how to use his arms well. He knows that he has 34-inch arms, which I believe are the same size as J.J. Watts. So to say that he's kind of got elite length is, accurate. So what he does is he does that little cross chop right there. You don't really notice it on film if you're just watching quickly, but he just bats kind of both of the arms across each other, um, and he's able to just completely freeze those hands inside again. He wasn't able to close, but just showing his technique. I mean, like I said, he's just a very well developed player at this point. He definitely knows how to play to his strengths. I'm not sure Mississippi State really they didn't use him like all other college like premier college edge rushers are used. Most guys are just kind of like pin down your ears and go, and we'll build around you. Whereas this defense is kind of built around Bernard Rick McKinney as opposed to him, so it kind of limited him a little bit. So he's at the bottom of the screen. Once again, throws hands. So that's where you see the length too. Right there. We'll slow this down a little bit. So he just kind of disposes of his hands, keeps that inside hand in, pins him back, has that length, that separation. Then he disposes of that, makes himself skinny, gets in on the tackle. And even if his teammate wouldn't have been there, he would have had the solo tackle by himself right there, just because of how well he's playing run defense. So here we got him at the bottom of the screen. Once again, just that one arm. Just using that length over and over again to beat these guys. See it right. He's just kind of driving, and then right there he decides he wants to get upfield, and he just pushes through him with one arm. Disengages, gets in on a sack. That's really his game. If you were picking, just a couple plays, that's probably it. I mean, he's not a crazy burst guy. He does have some bend, which I'll show later on this video, but his closing speed is probably the thing that you're worried about the most for him, as far as him playing on the edge. But he's got very good technique. He knows how to use length well. Really, if you just shorten that distance between him and the quarterback, he'll do well as a pass rusher, and that's why I think he's going to do a lot better as an interior defensive lineman in like nickel and dime situations than he is as a true edge rusher. And also, he's not going to be a weak side defender or a right side defender, typically at least. At the next level, he's probably going to be a strong side end. It was just that, you put your best pass rusher usually as the right defensive end, and Mississippi State didn't have another guy that was better than a guy who's probably going to go in the top 40 picks in this coming draft. You got a little swing move, gets in, and forces Marshall to throw that ball away. So like I said, I mean, he doesn't have those wow plays like Vic Beasley and Randy Gregory do, but he's really consistent in the run game. He's really consistent in the run game, and he does get pressure on the quarterback. So here's him in a goal line situation against LSU. That was the other game that I forgot in the beginning that I watched. So here he's going up against the tight end. Just kind of selling himself out, but still the tight end kind of sold himself out. But Preston, I mean, by himself with that one arm, just kind of shoves him back into the running back and allows 44 to come in and make that tackle. That's as much of a play with him as it is for 44, where he just opens that hole big and wide for him. See, here's what I'm talking about, him over the center. So this is what he did a lot. He actually did this a lot against Texas A&M too. And Texas A&M center actually held up very well. Mike Matthews, who's the brother of Jake Matthews, cousin of Clay Matthews, all of that. So that might be a tip to, kind of say, all right, Mike Matthews is probably a center that we need to watch for next year and have very high on our list. But, I mean, he was dominating the interior offensive line of LSU the entire game. So you see him here, just takes that short step to the right, just kind of pushes him, and then once he does a pretty good job of knowing that he can beat interior offensive linemen with speed. He can't do that with tackles really, but he knows he can do it with interior guys. So he's able to use that rip move just like that. Just kind of put a guy behind him, just get after the quarterback. And see, right there, you're able to see a little bit of bend. I mean, he's not running straight up. He's not a guy who's super flexible right here, but he still has some of that bend. Puts the center back, gets him. Just A-gap pressure right there. You saw a lot of that with like I said, Scott Crichton against Ronas Grasu of Oregon last year. And that was a huge thing for me, just being able to see him like, okay, his game kind of translates well where if you want to see him kick inside, he can do that. And then he did, just kind of dominated Ronas Grasu. And Ronas Grasu was is probably a top 3 center in this class. So to put that in kind of perspective, I mean, Scott Crichton went from a boundary or a defensive end, an edge player, kicked into nose tackle for a game, and then just kind of whooped ass. And that was huge for my grade because I think even in Minnesota, he's probably still going to do very well. I just think he's kind of buried by that depth chart right now. Once again, over the center. Gets going. Little swim move. The ball's dropped. Preston gets on the sack. Go ahead and turn this down. So here he is on the boundary, going up against Lyle Collins, who is my top tackle of this class. I know a lot of people are a big fan of him. So he's going up against Lyle. And right there, so a lot of people said that he doesn't have any bend in his game. And that's not necessarily true because you see it. I mean, you see it pretty consistently here and in the Texas A&M game that we're going to show after this, where there's a couple times where he shows it. He just doesn't have that speed, so he doesn't really get the opportunities to kind of show that bend usually. But he does have it at times. So I don't know. Saying that he doesn't have bend is kind of a wrong statement in my opinion because you see it at least, I think, 3 or 4 times between these two games where he's able to bend that. And maybe it's just because of the way he played him. Like I said, this defense is kind of built around McKinney and not him, where other defenses like Clemson's defense is built around Vic Beasley and stuff like that. So it took a situation like a 2nd and 10 late in the fourth quarter when LSU's down a score to see the bend for Preston Smith. Now, is that a reflection of him as an athlete, or is that a reflection of the defense as a whole? I've seen Preston Smith pretty much bend, like I said, over 2 games for pretty significant amounts. So I don't know. I think he's the type of guy who it totally wouldn't shock me if he was a much better professional player than he was in college. So he's at the bottom of the screen going up against Cedric Abohi, who people thought was a first-round pick. So they, like I said, people who say that he can't bend, that's not really what's going on. I mean, this is on air, where he's bending on air and then comes back into contact and doesn't lose his balance. I mean, some guys would have totally fallen over or wouldn't have been able to get that, that angle if you go back to it. I mean, there are certain players like Nate Orchard who just can't bend at all and they just rush straight up. They're never going to be running at this angle, especially not at his height. And that's another thing. Like I said, Preston Smith's game is really the big game, if you were, so to speak, where the small game is the edge benders. He's really able to do both. So I don't know. Maybe if he loses a little bit of weight, he'll have a little bit more giddy up in his legs, and he'll be able to have the juice to kind of get that closing speed and get more opportunities where he's actually able to bend. But I mean, he shows enough bend where you're fine with him playing base end on the strong side and trying to bend the edge on that side. On base downs where, nickel and dime situations, he ends up kicking into tackle. He's at the top of the screen this time. Just deflects his hands. And then once again, like I said, he's got that bend. It's nothing amazing, but he's doing it in space, which means that he's not being forced to do it. Which is kind of how some guys attribute bend sometimes. I don't know. Like you could get a shot up top and then your legs just kind of catch underneath you. He's doing it naturally. He doesn't need, a tackle being in the perfect position to do it. He's just bending as an athlete. And that showed up in his 3-cone time at the combine. So, I mean, I think you could throw out he can't bend the edge completely out of his scouting report, in my opinion. So right there, able to redirect. He just doesn't have the giddy up to make up that closing speed. Like I said, I mean, he's nothing that's like amazingly special. He's just a very consistent run defender. He can bend the edge, but you worry about his closing speed. I mean, he'll be able to get pressure. on guys, probably younger guys, because he's just got such good tech and he's got heavy hands and stuff like that. I think well-developed tackles will pretty much shut him down. But as an interior pressure guy, he might be the best in the class. And it wouldn't shock me if he were that Justin Tuck level type defender as an interior pass rusher. So that's really it that I have on Preston Smith at this point. I think he's a surefire, probably top 40 pick at this point. I like him a lot. He was a force player. A lot of people who said he couldn't bend, when I went back on the tape and when you look at his agility drills at the combine, that really doesn't show up at all. You're able to see him, ankle flexion. You're able to see his hips bend, all of that. His technique is amazing. He really wins in the big game, but if he loses some weight, he could win in the small game, and I think that's important. Like I said, he has the length of J.J. Watt, which is rare since J.J. Watt just kind of beats dudes on swim moves for 20 sacks or whatever he had last year. All right, so if you guys have any suggestions, hit me on Twitter. I'll see which other edge defenders I can make a couple videos of. I already did Marcus Rush of Michigan State, who I believe is going to be the most underrated edge rusher in this class. Huge fan of him. He was a 4-time honorable mention Big Ten player. He's Michigan State's all-time starts leader, and he was the guy playing opposite of Shalik Calhoun, and he's really getting no love right now when he's kind of amazing. And then the other guy that I did a video of was Trey Flowers, who kind of like Preston Smith wins in the big game. He's just a lengthy player, very good run defender. I don't think he can bend the edge like Preston Smith can, though, and I think that's kind of what separates them and what makes Preston Smith a guy who I can see being drafted in the first round, but I don't necessarily totally agree. So if you guys have suggestions on other edge rushers, preferably not guys like Vic Beasley or Randy Gregory. I mean, I think I've covered them pretty well through writing. I'm not a big Shane Ray fan, so if you guys want to see something on Shane Ray, or if you guys want to see something on Omogbeo Digzola, who I like a lot as a power rusher, or someone like Bud Dupree, who I know people are looking at as a boom or bust type of prospect at this point, then just hit me on there, JUMOSQ, and I'll see if I can get this video up as soon as possible. Thanks.